Wanshu.
The name, Wanshu, of all the katas we've covered, it's the most Chinese sounding name. Rohai, Basai, Chinto. They sound Eastern, but not specifically Chinese, but Wanshu sounds very Chinese. And that's a clue to its history. 1683, a Chinese envoy named Wang Zhi came to Okinawa to the port of Tamari. So this is a Tamari-tai kata, and brought this kata with him. Whether he created the kata or whether he already learnt it somewhere else and bought it, that seems to be lost, but it is Southern Chinese in origin. Again, Matsumura, so-called Matsumura. There are two schools of Wanshu Kata, Matsumura and Itosu, who created the pinans. So if you do your research and have a look, they seem to sort of fall into two different camps. And again, like a lot of these katas, nobody seems to do the same version twice. It's been so highly adapted to different schools and different systems, but you can get a general flavour of what the kata's about. There are sort of elements to it, as we covered with the pinans. So in Pinan Godan, it's the first time you get the 9th and 10th kata directions where you go up and down. And this is very much the same, where you get this coming up onto one leg and then dropping down. So it's very dynamic in that respect, shifting the centre, shifting the body line. There's also elements of deception within the kata. This Gakuzuki is meant to push your opponent back off balance, so then you can strike down. So little bits of clever deception, body shifting. So for that reason, it seems that I had a look on the Dangrai syllabus, and this is the kata for 4th dan. So the Dangrai is only listed up to 4th dan. So this is about as far as it sort of goes grading-wise. So although there's nothing particularly out of the ordinary stance-wise and technique-wise, its theories and ideas of deception, moving the centre up and down, moving the centre to the side, makes it an advanced kata. So, you know, if you're taking your 4th dan and you demonstrate it, these are things you probably need to bear in mind and make sure you emphasise and show. So nothing sort of really out of the ordinary, but more to it than meets the eye. So it's quite a dynamic and quite an interesting kata. So I mentioned that Sensei had covered most of the things I was going to look at in the kata. There was maybe a couple of little bits that we can add just to get your mind thinking, maybe look at things a little bit differently. So we get the section in the kata where we're getting these movements. I was wondering, okay, what could this be? But I think the answer to that question is at the end of that section, where you get the U punch. So if I can bother Simon, if somebody's going to attack you with a double punch, then you're going to need a double defence. And in Basai and some of the other katas, you do the double punch 3 times. So we get 3 defences. So it's like a question and answer. And this is what kata should be about. It should make you think, what the hell is this? Okay, what's that? Okay, oh, okay, we can put the two together. So I've got a question and an answer. And the other one relating to the U punch was, I think it was in Basai, we were talking about timing. So you might want to do this one first to see what the reaction's going to be. You know, is he going to stay where he is? Is he going to go backwards? Is he come forwards? 1, 2. The compression strike. Hips open. So we can use the closing of the hip as a strike. And then pinning this, use the shift for the hit. So again, just that little bit of timing. So yes, it works a treat together, but if we can get a free hit out of it, then come up. So again, you never know where he's going to be after the strike. So it just gives you that little opportunity to work out where he's likely to be. So just a couple of points, you know, when you're practicing, you might want to have a look at those. It might sort of set your mind racing and explore other things. And the hand. We discussed this in the training session with Sensei the other day, this concept of proprioception. The sensitivity of the nerves in your skin sends a signal to the brain 10 times faster than visualising something. So if you've made contact, because you've owned these all your life, then you generally know where they are. So rather than having to visually check where he is, you know where he is because you've got contact. So your strike can be accurate because you're in contact with the person, and that signal is 10 times faster than being visual. So again, a useful tool. You've got contact, you know where it is. So, general point number 1, Shin-gi-tai. For any technique to be successful, it needs 3 things: Shin-gi-tai. Shin is heart, spirit, mental state. It needs to have intent, kime, focus. So if you haven't got that, it's just a movement. If there's no intent, no focus, no desire to make that technique work and be strong, it's a dance. Gi, not this sort of gi, it's another word for waza or technique. So your technique has to be correct. If you're punching and it's chicken winging, bad wrist positions, you know, you're falling down after kicks because you're not snapping your kicks back, it's poor technique, and that's going to reduce the technique's effectiveness. And the last one is tai, is the body. And especially if you start delving into internals, what muscle chains are you using? Have you got the correct muscle chain engaged? It's also physical conditioning. You don't have to be Jean-Claude Van Damme, like a bodybuilder. But down at Shinkido a few years ago, we started a minimum fitness requirement for each grade. Since we've had that, the rate of injuries amongst the students has dropped. You know, there's fewer pulled muscles, fewer injuries, because the bodies are more conditioned and used to the physical activity. Because as you train and as your power level increases, eventually you might sort of exceed the capability of your body if your body does become stronger. You could drop a Ferrari engine into a Mini, and for a short while it'd be great, and then eventually the Mini body would fall to pieces and suspension would fall to pieces because it was never designed for that level of power. So you have to have these 3 components to make a technique work. For beginners, until your technique is really good and your body's conditioned, Shin is the big one. If you've got a ferocious fighting spirit, if you're jumped in the street, you know, your Gakuzukis might not be perfect, but if your fighting spirit is good enough, then you might win the day. As you progress, your fighting spirit needs to be good, but then your technique and your physicality needs to improve as well. So there's definite stages where you need to be. And when you get the whole package, then that's when your training can really sort of start to take off. You've got the mental intent. One of Sensei Roger's other long-time students, Sensei Mick Casserly, me and Mick partner for many years, and we work through the techniques and try and do the things Sensei's shown us and get the techniques right. Then eventually one of us will say, ramming speed, and that's when you go for it full pelt. Because if you constantly just practice beautiful technique, you'll have beautiful technique. But if somebody's trying to attack you in the street, they're not going to attack you with beautiful technique. They're going to attack you with ferocious intent. So if you can't match that intent and with some good technique, they're likely to prevail. So Shin-gi-tai is very important things to check and look for in your training and your progress through training.